is Cameo Carlson. I am the president of a company called mtheory Nashville. We're a manager services team here in town. And I want to talk to you guys about goal setting and how important this is for a release strategy. Every release strategy that works is because it aligns with your goals as an artist. And that's really what, if nothing else, I want you to take out of here tonight, is that if you are setting your goals and properly thinking about that in goal setting, then you know what you want to accomplish, and that's how you choose your strategy. Now, you would never run a business without goals in mind and thinking about that. So let's think about your business, right? When you go into the creation of art and you put commerce around it, it is a business. So let's put some business principles on this and think about these kinds of things in regard to your music and how it affects a release strategy. So the what is easy, right? The what is, what are you putting out? Is it a song? Is it an EP? Is it an album? Is there something else going on? I think sometimes where we get trapped, though, is in the when. I think that often artists, the minute that the music is finished, there's such a compulsion to get it out into the world and to share it, and I completely understand that. But there are a lot of other factors that you should really be thinking about in that when. What is driving your timeline? Do you have a tour that you're going to be supporting? Do you have a sync placement, perhaps? Are you looking to be on a certain festival where bookers are going to be looking at certain windows of time, which is something we'll talk about in a second. Who are you talking to? This is really important. You have to think about that actually before you put your music out. How are you going to be talking to your fans? Where are they? If you have a built-in fan base, that's great, but you have to be able to expand that and be thinking about that all the time. And partners are really important in this. Obviously, you're here because you are partners with Spotify, and they're an incredible partner, but also be thinking about the social platforms and blogs and other ways that people are going to find out about your music, and where do you have champions in the industry that you can talk to, because that should weigh into your release strategy as well, right? That should weigh into the when. And then where is really the same thing. Where are you talking to the fans? Is it on platform? What are the things you can do on platform? What are the things that you can do off platform? Where are you going to connect with those fans, let them know that the music's out, and continue to engage those fans? So let's talk about goals. Goals are 10 years and 10 months. If you do not have a goal, you cannot have a plan that's going to work. You might get lucky, right? This is a business of time, talent, and luck, and if a couple of those are firing at the same time, something might happen for you. But I would argue that successful artists have a plan, and they have a goal, and they stick to that. So make sure that you're actually writing goals down, short-term and long-term. You want to be thinking about how you're going to get to that goal. Even if the goal is in 15 years you want to play Madison Square Garden, everything you do now should be thinking through that lens. Is this the thing that's going to get me to Madison Square Garden in 15 years? These are really important things. Then back yourself out from that. Think about 10 months from now. Think about all the things that have to happen. This is how we build careers and not just moments in time, right? And that's incredibly important. You can have a great moment, you can have a big playlist or a big opportunity or a big sync or a big look, but if you don't have all these other pieces together and have a plan and have a goal, it probably won't last and it won't sustain you as an artist. Now, if you're wondering how a goal can actually drive a strategy, I would tell you that we had an artist, and this artist, one of their goals was to play Coachella. This is a big goal for this artist, and it was not a no-brainer. This was a country artist, and it was not something that was an easy layup. So when we sat down and thought through the timeline for release, what we thought about was, okay, if Coachella is happening in this window, we know that the bookers for Coachella are actually looking to do the booking in June and July, good 9 months out from the festival. In that window of time, we need to have this artist looking relevant, mainstream, bigger than country, whatever it is, we're going to have a mainstream hit within this window of time. So we could not put out the album in May, which is what our label wanted us to do. We had to put it out in March. We needed more runway to be able to build into what her goal happened to be. So you have to think about things from that lens as well. That's how it affects your release strategy. You're the driver behind building your fans, creating momentum, all of those things. And I know that sometimes we get caught up in a big playlist as the driver, but this is the most important thing you will learn. A playlist is not a marketing plan. Playlists are great, right? Getting editorial love is great, but that's not something that you have any control over. So that is not a marketing plan. That is not something that you can sit back and wait on. You have to do the things that you have control over. Editorial's great, but you can't control that. These are some of the things that you can control, though. You can control growing your followers and engaging with them. This is incredibly important, and I think something that we miss sometimes on the artist side of things is we don't actively ask our fans to come along with us. We think we're doing something and we're putting a link out and we've got to swipe up on Instagram to a song. Ask them to play the song. Ask them to follow you on Spotify. Ask them to actively participate in what you're doing. We don't do that enough. We have to do that. You have to focus where you have control, right? If there's no control over editorial, you do have control over release radar. If you're talking to your fans and you're building your fans and they're following you, that is an incredibly important tool that Spotify gives us, where your fans are gonna know when you have new music. And if those fans are engaged, then it puts you in the mix for other algorithmic playlists. You need to connect with fans, because the more core fans you have, the more data you have. Those core fans, those are the drivers behind everything else that happens in your career. And that's true whether you're trying to build a following on Spotify or whether you're thinking about 20 years down the road. They're the ones that are always going to be there for you. So make sure you're engaging and talking to them. Now, if there's anyone in here that does not have Spotify for Artists, you need to get that taken care of, because it is probably the greatest piece of free equipment that any artist has at their fingertips. And that's because of the data you can see about what's going on with your fans and where they are, but also the pitch tool that they introduced last year. The pitch tool allows you to give a signal to the editorial team when you have new music out, right? You have to be ahead of it. And I would argue that where some people get excited a week out, because a week is the cutoff to really make sure that your music is submitted for editorial consideration, release radar and some of those algorithms start at 28 days. So you need to be thinking about your plan around releasing your music a month before that music is in the marketplace. You need to be talking to your fans, engaging them, bringing them back into Spotify, bringing them back into playlists so that they're active and they get notified when you have new music coming out, right? So this is an incredible tool that all of you can use. And it's not difficult, it's not super nerdy, but it works really well. Let's take a look at success and figure out how we define success. I put this up here because this is global industry revenues by product. And it's a lot of words and colors, but basically what you need to know is that 20 years ago, 80% of the money in this industry came through content specifically, and that included the money that artists made. Now that's closer to 30%. So for artists, you have to be thinking about success, maybe not in the old ways that we used to measure that, right? Number ones and radio and all these things, they're all incredibly important. If you get them, it's great. But you have to define success for yourself. And I would say that always, as with everything, goes back to what your goals are. So connected fan strategy is something that we do a lot of at my company. This is the first thing that we do, is sit down with an artist and we talk through their goal setting. Everything in an artist's world is connected. Connected fans are the ones that you have a direct line of communication with, right? And so this is the core fan base down here at the bottom. What happens is we get very focused on what happens for those passive fans and the potential fans. That's where playlisting fits in, right? Those are the fans that may find out about you because they like songs similar to what you write, or they like artists similar to what you write. That's not where we focus. We focus on the core fans. You're constantly using content to activate those fans. The thing about the core fans is they drive the algorithm. So on every single platform that's out there, algorithms are fan finders. Right? So algorithms are meant to find new fans for your music. They're gonna find fans of similar types and things. It only works if your core fans are activated. So this is incredibly important that you don't miss out on what your core fans are doing just because you know they're there. You have to be talking to them, you have to be working with them so that they can help you on week 2 and week 10 and week 40, as opposed to week 1, where you might get some love and some editorial and support around what you're doing. It's important. Tyler Childers is one of my clients. And one of the things that was about Tyler, if you don't know him, is he is a country singer from Kentucky and has built an incredible live bass touring for the last 5 years. When we started working with Tyler, we noticed that what we were seeing at the shows and the growth we were seeing in his live business was not matching what we were seeing in streaming at all. And some of that was because he had self-released his music. He literally sold, hand-pressed CDs out of the back of cars, and he didn't have a team that was put together that had put a strategy around it. He had just built this up live. So we had a song. Tyler signed to a major label deal. And we had a song that we knew we were going to be focused on, and we were going to go after radio and all the traditional things that sort of like matter in that major label world. But what we were afraid of is that we were going to come out of the door with all the bells and whistles and all the muscle of a major label, and it wasn't going to do what we thought because we didn't know if the streaming was going to work. So we decided that our strategy would be to put out a song prior to our focus song, and we would ask the fans to do some work for us so that we could see if we could connect the dots between what we were seeing live and what we were not seeing in streaming. So we called it priming, right? So our strategy was priming the pump for that second song, which was our focus song. We literally asked partners not to give it editorial support. We wanted this to be about the fans, finding them, asking them to do something. So we went to the places where we had conversations with fans and where we owned that relationship with fans and literally asked them all to do one thing when the song came out, and that was to go stream the song on Spotify. We were hyper-focused on that. And when we did that, we thought it was gonna work. We didn't know it was gonna work as well as it did, but they had never been asked. They had never been focused and asked to do something, and they did it. We doubled his followers, we doubled his streaming in a matter of a couple of weeks. So for us, it was highly successful because then we were ready with that second song. So our release radar was much bigger. Everything that we did was aligned around that. And it also made a stronger case for us with editorial, right? Because we had all this incredible data that we could use back against them on what we had been able to do with this fan base. So we thought really hard about the timeline when we were thinking about this for Tyler in this scenario, because I think what comes up a lot is more music, more often. How much music? How often do I put my music out? Content is what we do use to engage fans. There's no off cycle in a streaming world and a social world, and we're constantly trying to engage. But I would say you still have to think about what your goals are. And I use this as an extreme example, but think about Old Town Road, right? Think about Lil Nas X. The truth is, the goal with that was to create momentum with volume and frequency. It was really about bombarding. There must be 100 versions of that song, 100 versions of content that came along with that song. That was because the goal was momentum. With Tyler, we weren't thinking about that. Our goal was to engage the fan base so that we could grow it over time. So in very weird and different ways, successful strategies, but based on goals that were drastically different. That's why the goals inform everything that you do. And the release strategy depends on what those goals are, which brings us back really to what this is about. If you set your goals, the best strategy for you is the one that will support those goals, long-term and short-term. And that's really what you need to be thinking about. So, thank you. I think we have some time for some questions.
I was just wondering, with Tyler's campaign with the fans for the first initial song, how did you go about reaching those fans?
We had spent probably the 3 months prior to knowing what the timeline was going to be building up an email database. He had none when he came in the door. It just wasn't something that they had prioritized or thought about. And so knowing that live was such a big deal for Tyler, we had a really easy way to do that, which was we could dangle the carrot of free tickets in front of fans in exchange for an email address. So the first thing we did was we built up an email address very methodically over a few months. We even spent a little advertising money on being able to run some lead ads against that too and get the email database up. So we went through all the social platforms, email, any place that we could find them just to make sure that we were asking them to participate.